So in this segment, we're going to be discussing Rachel Reeves being confident in getting a US trade deal and why this is complete nonsense from the British government.
Are you getting distracted by the promise of a US trade deal?
Well, we're confident that we can secure an agreement with the United States. We're not going to rush a deal. We want to get the right deal in our country's national interest.
So we've heard this one before, right? The problem is, with getting a trade deal with the US, Northern Ireland is one of the major stumbling blocks, and you still have Richie Neal. I think he's still head of Ways and Means, which is trade deals, and they've ruled it out. There's a lot of people with lineage from Ireland who have also ruled out such a trade deal because it would be too much of an issue for Northern Ireland, and that's your first stumbling block already. Getting a good trade deal with the Americans will be impossible, purely because Trump will look to exploit the UK. We're in a very vulnerable position. This is folly. We saw the Tories really struggle under Boris Johnson, desperately trying to get a trade deal with the Americans. It just didn't happen, and it never will.
And that is what people can expect from this government, whether it is stepping in to preserve steel making in Scunthorpe, or whether it is the announcements we're making today to stop our high streets being undercut by cheap imports, or whether it is trade deals with countries around the world. This government will always act in the national interest to support jobs, investment and trade in Britain.
The US Vice President has suggested that you might be close to a deal. You're due to meet your US counterpart Scott Bessent shortly, and negotiations are ongoing in the background. What are you prepared to offer him?
Well, those negotiations are ongoing. It's clear that the United States also want to secure an agreement with the UK, which reflects the huge strengths our economy has, the political and financial stability that Britain is able to offer, as well as...
With this stuff, right, Trump's in the pocket of the oligarchs even more aggressively than last time. What he's going to want is access to data, access to agriculture. They're talking about how the UK is going to have to accept chlorinated chicken and things like that. Like this deal, I'm telling you now, it's a massive red herring to kind of hide Labour's failings in other areas. It's just not going to happen.
As being a country that is open to business, investment and to trade. So we'll continue those discussions, but I'm really clear that we will only sign a deal if it is in our national interest to do so.
So basically, we're not going to sign a deal. Let's be honest now. Like, it's just not going to happen. And you had Zoe Gardner discussing the subject as well.
Let's talk about what a trade deal with the US would actually look like with Donald Trump holding these tariffs over us as a threat. We're talking about opening up our food supply to US foods, which means chlorinated chicken is the one that everybody knows, but in general, across the board, incredibly much lower standards for animal welfare and for agricultural products, which would decimate our farming industry.
They also offer much more in terms of subsidies to their farmers as well, which will put British farmers at a huge disadvantage just on that alone. And so that, and again, the Northern Ireland thing of, if we start importing chlorinated chicken again, that's another huge problem.
And introduce foods into our food supply that, frankly, the British people don't want. The other thing that is very likely on the table in a US trade deal would be tax breaks for the tech oligarchy in the US and limits on our ability to put controls and regulations on the social media giants coming from the US. Nobody in Britain wants that.
To be fair, the UK offered the tax breaks in exchange for just us not having tariffs, so that's already on the table. That one's free.
Is not worth it. It is not worth it to roll over like a poodle on Trump's lap, show him our belly and give him what he wants. That is not going to get us any favors. We saw it really very clearly. The tariffs came down on the basis of what kind of trade deficit the US had with other countries. Our sucking up to Trump, or as he would say it, kissing his ass, which is what Starmer did, got us absolutely nothing.
And for the one saying it was a Brexit benefit, I think the EU got hit with the same tariffs now as we have. Trump in the end lowered it, so you got nothing out of it.
Of course, now all the tariffs are 10% anyway.
Yeah.
So the Brexit benefit lasts a couple of days.
Nothing.
And we're doing a deal with a guy who cannot be trusted on anything he says. So that's what I want. This one. a new trade Russian roulette. You send your containers to the US and try and guess what tariffs will apply on the day it gets there. This is a guy who canned the trade deal he has with Canada and Mexico. The same agreement that he signed, by the way, guys. He's canned it. So for anyone arguing like he's trustworthy, he's not. He's probably the least trustworthy politician in the world, honestly. The guy can't stop lying. So, good luck with this. This is just nonsense. And, finally, the guy's such a clown show. You've got the Chinese embassy clowning Trump again, which, is probably just a replica outfit, to be honest. But you got the Chinese embassy once again trolling White House Secretary Caroline Leavitt for wearing a dress made in China, which again is probably a replica, but even still, like, this is the situation they're in. They talk about, all of these guys talk about hire American, buy American, all of this stuff, when these guys who run companies don't do that. It just, this whole system makes no sense. So this, chasing this trade deal with Donald Trump is just a huge red herring, distracting people and the public from Labour's own failings elsewhere. And the idea that we would get one, it's just ludicrous. Any kind of good trade deal we get is just crazy. You're going to make any kind of agreement with the EU much more difficult by following this path as well, when the EU is the real answer here. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, support the channel on Patreon if you can, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.